Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hi, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 20 of Cognitive. Can you believe it? 20 episodes? Seems very weird to me, but here we go. It just keeps on going. Oh, if you'd like to comment on this episode or any other episode, you can comment on our blog page at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, or you can go to our group on Ravelry. I certainly hope in our group on Ravelry that you will add yourself to the introductions, and if you are in the original series of introductions, please reintroduce yourself, because kids, that started in 2008 and it's 2021. There is a link to add yourself as well in the show notes. There's a link to add yourself to the Cognitive Listeners Map. And I have a YouTube channel creatively and originally named Dr. Gemma, 2 words spelled out. On the YouTube channel, I have 1-minute flash tips about surviving the pandemic and some longer discussions around strategies that I use most often in therapy. Running down the top of the blog post notes, there will not be a CFR this year, although I have high hopes as we all get vaccinated. That situation may improve. Also, please do not try to add yourself to my group on Instagram, because I'm getting hit with a lot of robo accounts. The interesting thing about that is that started when I started posting praise to President Biden on his accounts. I started getting obscene Instagram stuff. So I guess, what can I tell you? The non-Biden fans, the Trumpsters, have found a whole new set of weapons. But anyway, I'm not adding people to Instagram or any other social media following because of that. You can follow me at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on the Ravelry group. And I would really appreciate it. I try to answer people when they write. In the warm thanks department, speaking of the introductions on Ravelry, I just wanted to point out, thanks, Z Juniper, Natty Lady, Turbo Gal. Yes, Turbo Gal, I do remember you from many years of yore, and I've always been grateful for your following me. And the Fat Lazy Hooker, welcome to the group and welcome back, since some of you are coming back. Thank you so much for adding introductions there. I really appreciate you getting that ball rolling for me. Now you've all been waiting for what's on my hooks and needles. Well, the Spectrum socks, I've added a stray row here and there, but they're just not my focus right now. I have been more interested in the repetitive stockinette land. I've been more interested in Twin Faces vest, which, as you may remember, I restarted in a much smaller size. I'm on the second skein. Now, last time when I finished the second skein, I sent it to her and it wasn't very long. Well, it's way longer now. So I'm working my way up that. She still has not sent me back the original one, which is 2 skeins of yarn I need to reclaim to make this one. But hopefully she will. She had a very hard week last week, which honestly, I don't know if the moon was blue. Everybody did, but we'll get to that later. In the meantime, for excitement, I'm doing several things. The temperature blanket, my crochet project, is up to date, which is very, very exciting. It's mostly in shades of blue and blue-green with a touch of yellow here and there. We seem to be heading into warmer weather. Now, I say that, but that's wrong. My son, whose birthday is on St. Joseph's feast day on March 19th, my son was born, and I remember clearly, I thought, well, at least he was born in the spring, and then it got miserably cold for like the month after he was born, 15 halcyon years ago. So I know we're not through the cold weather yet, but I can promise myself that we almost are. But at any rate, the temperature blanket is just beautiful. And It's still on track to be about 72 inches long, which is really, really good. It's about where we want it to be. It's just beautiful. It's in Knit Picks Brava Sport Weight, which is an acrylic, and I'm really, really happy about that. In the meantime, the Wild Lettuce Shawl, the very beautiful shawl by Michelle Miller, Fickle Knitter, free on Ravelry, very, very pretty. I finished the body. Oh, I'm so relieved. It's very simple, very straightforward. And you get to a place where you do the edge and then you do 8 repeats of the central 10 stitches, and then you do the middle and then 8 repeats of the next 10 and then the edge. And I got there. Whew. So now it's kind of funky because what you do is you take the needle, and I leave all the stitches on it live, and I put a little blocker on one end, the end where the yarn is not hanging off the live yarn. So I put a little needle blocker there so the stitches don't slip off it. And then I took another needle, a double point. It doesn't matter what you use. You could use a straight needle for this. But I used the new double point along with the remaining open end where the live stitches are. And it's very fun. You knit on 25 stitches right onto the end, right after the live stitches, and those are going to be the edging, and you're knitting them at 90 degrees to the original pattern, which is really cool. So when you get to the last stitch of the new 25, you knit 2 together with the last, like the outermost stitch, live stitch on the outer edge of the body of the shawl. And so what happens is, instead of binding off the shawl, what you're doing is you're knitting sideways. You're knitting this lace pattern, and the last pattern of the lace pattern knits onto the last live stitch on the long needle that you've blocked one end of. And yes, I took the other needle blocker and I blocked one end of the new needle that I'm using. So I have one long circular needle that I knit the original shawl on with all the live stitches. I think it's 185. And one end of that is blocked so the stitches don't fall off. Then I took a new needle and I'm using that, and that's also a circular, so I blocked one end of that. So I'm just treating it now like I'm knitting on 2 straights, except that all the live stitches are still on my left-hand needle. And it's very cool, and I'm really enjoying it. I really like this trick of knitting on the lace edging. I've done it before, most notably on my recent Ohm shawl that I finished. And I just think it gives you the coolest results. So I've got 2 repeats done on that. I'm really just trying to do one little repeat of the lace edging a day. I think there's something like 60 of them. Plus there's a center portion. When you get near the center of the needle, you do a sort of short row trick to get around the center of the live stitches so you get a point, and then you go back to knitting the regular chart for the, knitted on lace edging. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. The knitted on lace edging is a very, very simple pattern that does not vary in stitch counts, 25 stitches per row. So it's very, very easy to whiz through that. And I think it's a 12 row repeat, so I've done 24 of those rows, which means I've picked up. You only knit together with the live stitches on the odd number rows. So I've picked up and knitted 12 stitches of the edging. I hope this isn't hopelessly complicated the way I'm describing it. It's very cool and I'm really loving it. But I needed something finished, and I have, as I've said before, all this leftover yarn from recent projects. It's kind of bugging me. And the thing that was bugging me this week was the leftover bulky Wool of the Andes yarn in Aurora Heather Green from Knit Picks that I used to make my Agnes sweater. And I had a whole skein of it, as you may remember last week. Actually, I had more. I had about a skein and 3/4. So last week, I made myself the lovely bandana cowl, which I highly recommend if you want a quick lesson in how short rows work with wraps and all that. And I still had, about 7/8 of a skein. So I just looked up patterns on Ravelry. I said, what takes a skein? And I found the slash dot cowl. How, in what universe this only takes 1 skein of yarn, I can't imagine, but that's how it's listed on Ravelry. You're supposed to get 9 inches of cowl out of this. I think that's a lot more than 1 skein. But This is really, really nice. It's an 88 stitch round, and you use 2 different colors. And it's a linen stitch, and some of you may remember that from days of yore, which means you knit around. You cast on 88, you knit around. And I'm doing the single loop, not an infinity scarf, just a loop that fits close to your neck. So you cast on 88, you knit around, then you purl around. Then you go into linen stitch, which is you pick up the second color. You've knitted the first, you purled and then knitted, you knitted and then purled in the first color, in the main color. Then you pick up your contrast color and you do a pattern of slip 1, knit 1. And then, we have such Eleanor problems tonight. She's mad because she can't get in the room where the cat food is, so she's pestering all of us. So you may hear heavy breathing in the background. That's Eleanor trying to pester me to let her in to the room where the cat food is so she can steal it, which she knows she's not allowed to do. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so round 1 of the linen stitch pattern is contrast color, slip 1, knit 1, all the way around. Then round 2 is main color, knit 1, knit all the way around, stockinette. Round 3 is knit 1, slip 1, so the reverse of round 1. Okay, so knit 1, slip 1, all the way around. And then round 4 is main color again, knit all the way around. So odd numbered rows are the contrast, even number rows are the main color. And it makes a beautiful pattern. And of course, if you've ever done the linen stitch, it'll make you completely bonkers, particularly if you do it in a small yarn, because it does not take up a lot of space. It kind of contracts the yarn. And so it can take a while to knit anything in it. Fortunately, this pattern is great because it's in bulky weight, size 5 for those of you who use the scale. And to do that, I used the wool of the Andes, as I said, in the green Aurora Heather. But then I had a leftover skein from doing my Frances Revisited sweater of the fantastically beautiful Malabrigo Rios in Anniversaria, which of course is a size 4. It's not a bulky, it's a worsted weight. So I took my trusty skein winder and ball winder, and I first took the skein and wound it into a center pull ball. Then I took the end and the middle, and I wound them, I laid them side by side in the ball winder and wound it again. So now I had a center pull ball with the outside edge, instead of being 2 loose ends, was of course the very center of the original ball, and so it's just a kind of loop sticking off the end. But anyway, that gave me a lovely doubled worsted weight to make a second bulky weight. So my main color is the Aurora Heather, and the contrast is the beautiful Malabrigo Rios in Anniversario. So I'm trying to get 9 inches of this, and you'd think in bulky that would whip up real quick, but no. But I'm not sure where I am. I'm probably about 5 or 6 inches. But again, I enjoy doing 1 4-row repeat of that cowl. I thought I would have it finished, frankly, by the time I did this podcast, but the best laid plans of mice and men. But it did give me, thank you, Robbie Burns, it did give me a chance to figure out how to use the ball winder to make a 2-strand yarn for my second colorway, for the Anniversario colorway. And it's coming out very, very pretty. What am I currently wearing? Well, I'm wearing a bathrobe because of what I will tell you later. But what I was wearing earlier was indeed the Frances Revisited sweater. And I put in 2 pictures, one with and without the cowl, because I wore my bandana cowl over it because I was cold. So if you look at the 2 pictures, the top one is the Frances sweater, Frances Revisited, with the bandana cowl on top of it, and I must say I like it. But then I took the bandana cowl off so you could see the lovely turtleneck of the Frances Revisited. These are 2 patterns I can't recommend enough to you. When you need a quick 1-skein pattern that's going to be very usable, I love the bandana cowl. I haven't made one in a few years. I think I've made a total of like 4 or 5 of them. Because when I have that wild skein of hand spun lying around, if I'm not making it into a com cowl, I'm usually making it into a bandana cowl, particularly if it's got any kind of stripe to it, which I think gives a lot of interest to the bandana cowl. What is the bandana cowl? It's a pattern by Pearl Soho, and it's just lovely because what it is it's like a triangular bandana, except there's no, the 2 pointed ends that would go around your neck, They're not. It's joined into a circle. So you've got this one point where the bottom end of the triangle would be going down the front of you, and then the two ends that you would tie, instead, it's just a solid circle around your neck. So I just really love this thing. It's easy to do. It's a fast knit, a 2-day knit for me, and I'm slow. And it goes with just about everything, and it's great to use up spare yarn. So, and there's my Frances Revisited, which I dearly love. It's a fantastic pattern if you enjoy turtlenecks. Socks, I believe I was wearing. I took a shower when I got home today, but I was wearing Forbidden Fiber, thank you. I just have it stuck in my head there. It's Forbidden Fiber, and this is her sock yarn. It's no stellina in it. So I don't remember the name of it. Pride is the one with stellina. At any rate, it's beautiful. It's got no stellina. It's just the usual merino nylon cross. And again, it's dyed in the stripes for the book version of Ravenclaw, which is bronze and blue from Harry Potter. And again, I really like it because the stripes come out beautifully, but there's a slightly smudgy quality to them, which I think gives the sock a lot more interest than a sharp edge stripe. What else? Mimi's Needle Basket, one of my favorite resources. She sells ChiaoGoo needles. She would like you to know that there is someone ripping off ChiaoGoo. They're selling needles from China, and I believe ChiaoGoo is manufactured in the United States, although its founders are Chinese. I believe I met them once years ago at TNNA. At any rate, somebody is ripping off ChiaoGoo, and they're even using their logo. So be careful when you buy your ChiaoGoo needles, okay? That you're buying them from a reputable dealer. Be careful not to buy them from Amazon or some online ad. Make sure you're getting the real thing. I'd hate to have phony ChiaoGoos. I have treasured my set that I got at that very TNNA, oh my gosh, years ago, probably 10 or 11 years ago, and I just value them. They're so good. The lace-tipped interchangeables, oh my gosh, they're so wonderful, the red ones. Still waiting for the electric eel wheel, but the boat with all the parts has made it to Savannah, Georgia, which means that Maurice will be getting a delivery soon and our wheels will be on their way. On to a strategy. Now you may remember we're doing distress tolerance, and we were using the acronym IMPROVE because we're talking about if you're stuck in a situation, how do you improve the moment? So we're up to the P, and I love this one. It stands for pray, as in P-R-A-Y. And it's a good thing to remember that the woman who created this system, Marsha Linehan, wonderful person, she's very, very deeply spiritual. And she invented dialectical behavioral therapy because her original goal was to work with the people who were constantly trying to kill themselves. She thought that was going to be depressed people, and this is going to be important when we get to the blather. Turns out it's not. Actually, depressed people, there's some chance, yes, they'll try to kill themselves, but actually the people who most frequently attempt to kill themselves have a personality disorder that leads to feelings of very rapid shift in mood and very overwhelming feelings of self-loathing that come on very rapidly and then change fairly rapidly. And so they have a kind of impulsivity attached to that, and they will act in self-harming ways. And it turns out they're the ones she ended up helping the most, which is really valuable because there's a lot of self-harming wandering around in the world of psychotherapy. I mean, eating disorders, drug addiction. There's all sorts of ways people self-harm. And Linehan gave us this enormous gift because when she started talking about suicide as self-harming, she opened the door on using her very excellent treatment system on all the other forms of self-harming. In fact, that's what this is all about. The part we're on, the distress tolerance skills, are basically formulated around the question, how do I do something better than harm myself when I'm distressed? How do I not act on impulse and cut myself or burn myself or smoke or drink or kill myself? And that's the whole central theme here is what can I do when I'm really upset? Now, the beautiful thing is people like us who aren't out there harming ourselves, at least not knowingly, we can use these skills too. These things are so universally applicable that it's just amazing. I use these skills with virtually everybody I see now because it's a really great system. Now then, having said that, So here's Marsha Linehan, and she's a very deeply spiritual Roman Catholic, and she starts integrating Zen into cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not really any surprise this woman is going to see prayer as a part of Zen, as a part of mindfulness and meditation. And many religious and spiritual paths do. Now, not everybody calls it prayer. Back in the day, I knew Wiccans who had told me that what I called praying, they call magic or casting spells. I'm not going to argue with them. I don't need to argue with anybody about this. What I would say is, in Linehan's definition, what you're talking about is you're stuck in a painful situation, you can't get out of it. And she would say that what you're doing is focusing on a higher entity, whether it's God, whether it's Christ, whether it's Allah, Yahweh, whether it's the universe, whether it's the goddess or the god, whether it's your belief in karma or some universal guideline, whatever it is, this is the moment to think about that you can talk to it, you can ask it for help, or you can simply focus on your belief that the universe is working as it should, even down to this uncomfortable experience you're having. That's really hard in some situations, I grant you. And yet, the research on prayer is pretty good, and it suggests that it improves people. There is some funky research that suggests, they did an experiment where they had cardiac patients who were getting surgery, and they did not know this, but people were praying for them. And there was a control group that were not prayed for. The ones who were prayed for did better. It's very hard to modulate that kind of experiment. It's very hard to find people who can set up the experiment and completely randomize it. So many biases are possible in this, but I take it very seriously that all the indicators are in the research that people who pray do better in the world. They feel better. They live longer, actually. And people who are prayed for seem to do better, seem to benefit from it. You can look at it the way I think many people do, which is to say it's the sending of good energy. I don't care. The point is, one of the things you can do to improve the moment, if you are so oriented, is pray. Is simply give yourself up to the faith in some higher power that is holding this moment together and organizing your life, should you believe in that. Okay. Put a lid on it. Nope. And it's been very chaotic. I didn't really cook much last week either. In fact, I ended up, I think, on Tuesday afternoon making brownies and bread because I didn't cook on my Sunday, Monday weekend. Instead, what I did this weekend was the running shoes and getting the windshield repaired, and thereby hangs a tale. Several, in fact. Oh, shoot. And this is where we talk about the running shoes, now in quest of my 30 minutes a day of exercise. I went on a running shoe quest, and boy, of course it turned into an experiment, turned into a social experiment, had to do it. And I have a thumbs up and a thumbs down, a big thumbs down and a big thumbs up. So, last week, I went to a running store in Encino, in the San Fernando Valley, called Fleet Feet Sports. Very big chain. Now, I didn't think much of it at the time. I was wearing sweatpants and a turtleneck and a pullover sweater, my brick sweater, and I had my hair wrapped because I have 2 people in my home who have not been vaccinated, and I worry about them. And so if I go into stores, I tend to wrap my hair. That's because when I come home, I shower and wash my hair. And I don't always want to wash my hair. It's kind of a big stringy mess sometimes. So I wrap it instead. And then when I come home, I take a shower and I unwrap. So my hair, I assume, has not been coated in COVID. Okay. And I actually went to a lot of trouble with the wrap. I was having a lot of fun. I double wrapped it and tied a cute little knot over my right ear and had 2 adorable little tails. And just so you know, my ears were sticking out and the front of my hairline was sticking out. So I was not completely covered up. Okie doke. So, and let's remember, I'm a 60-year-old woman going into a running store, but the things that give away my age were pretty much covered, the gray in my hair and the kind of postmenopausal neck wrinkles. So all you could see was my face, but you could see my hair, you could see my ears. Okay, So I go into Fleet Feet Sports, and a young guy comes out, and I had made an appointment to get a running shoe fitting. Guy comes out, and he's really uncomfortable, and I just said, look, here's what I want. We don't really have to do a lot of fitting. I want to look at size 9 and size 9.5 shoes in what's called the Hoka 1-1, and I want your most heavily padded style. He brings them out, and we're putting them on, and they're a little bit tight, and they're not terribly tight, and I'm thinking, well, will they stretch? And I thought this store had custom fitted insoles. Didn't. They had a wall of insoles, and you could sort of pick and choose with their help, right? So I see this big wall, and I think, well, with all those choices, that'll be okay. Unfortunately, in the middle of this, a man about my own age comes out with a mask. He looks me up and down, and then he stands in front of me and crosses his arms with his legs braced. Looks very hostile. So I said, hello, and he just stares me straight in the eye. And I'm thinking, what's the matter with him? So anyway, I buy the shoes. Well, the salesman, who's a young guy, looks like he's in his 20s, gets really uncomfortable and starts trying to hustle me out of the store. And I said, well, wait a minute. These are running shoes. I want to try them. I want to run in them. This is really normal. Last time I bought shoes here, I ran back and forth in front of the store. Oh, Mr. Older Guy didn't like that. He starts sort of looming over me. And I looked at him and I said, look, buddy, I'm going to leave my purse behind. So you have a hostage, okay? You can have my driver's license, all my ID. I'm going to go run in the shoes. Now at this point, you're asking yourself quite reasonably, why did you even keep buying? Why didn't you take them off, throw them at the guy, and leave? Yeah, I kind of wondered that myself, but I really wanted the shoes. Okay, so I go out front without my purse, and I run up and down, and I'm thinking, what the heck is wrong with me? But I thought, well, this is a long trip to get good shoes, and, I'm going to get my insoles, and I'm at least going to walk out here with shoes. I'll be darned if I came all this way. Drove over an hour through heavy traffic, Okay, I go back in. The guy is standing over my purse with his arms crossed, staring at me, now openly aggressively. And the young guy's babbling. And so I said, I'd really like to get some insoles. And the young guy, the salesman, says completely idiotically, oh, no, you really don't. Just run without the insoles. You'll be better off. And I'm like, what, are you nuts? And the older guy is staring at me. And I thought, I can't believe this place. And I said, okay, whatever. And I thought, there's a place I can get fitted insoles. I'll find the other store that has this custom fitted insoles, And so I figure I'll do that. So I take my shoes and I leave. And, all the way home, I'm beating myself up. I'm saying, what am I thinking? And I'm thinking, what was wrong with that guy? What was wrong with him? Okay. So meanwhile, I come home and I hear about the shooting in Atlanta. And, at the time, I didn't think much because I said the news was still emerging when I heard about it. And I said, okay, I can't do this. I have to treat patients. I can't get focused on this because it's going to be a little too distracting. So I go a few days and I posted something about Biden still in office and we still haven't got socialism. We still haven't had our guns taken. And Coop Comp, bless her soul, one of my long-term listeners, posted a very kind statement. And she didn't say this. But she just posted something about what a rotten week it's been. And I sort of thought, yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a little tone deaf to talk about, hey, they didn't take our guns away. It doesn't sound right. So I took it down. And many thanks, Coop Comp. I think it was a true post. And I don't think you had to read it as, they didn't take our guns away. Maybe they should have. But I still think it was tone deaf. Like it just came across wrong. And I think that I kind of appreciate Coop Comp saying like this. She didn't say it this way at all. She just said, what a bad week. But I thought, yeah, it might not be the week to talk about the fact that the Democrats aren't taking guns away. Anyway, so I took it down. And I was talking to one of my patients who's Asian about it. And she said, we were talking about it. She said, we live in this very affluent area. And she said, she said, in general, you just don't think of this stuff happening, and yet it does. And she said, I experience it because I'm part of the problem. And I was appalled. And I said, no, you're not the problem. My people are the problem. This isn't about you. This is about us. And she said, yeah. And she said, there's you see it all the time when you're Asian, that there's these little things going on up here. And I said, well, yeah, I had this weird experience in a running store. And I told her about it. And without two blinks, she said, it's because your hair was covered. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, he thought you were some kind of terrorist. And I said, first of all, talk about tone deaf. I was not, I don't know what that model of terrorism is. A woman with her hair covered? Because I'm sitting here thinking, now I do, going by the stereotypes, it's Islamic, I think. But, it could be Orthodox Jewish. I was dressed more like Orthodox Jewish, frankly, because I was showing more of my form, although my collarbones were covered. But my hair and ears were sticking out, man. The ear thing, not too often with Islamic girls or with Jewish girls, Hair things sometimes. You might see the hair in the front sometimes sticking out. Anyway, it was bizarre. And, and again, I'm thinking, I know people who cover for religious reasons who are conservative Christian, who live north of me up, I don't even know how to describe the area. It's called the Grapevine in California. There's a whole community of people up there, and the women cover, and they go out in public, and they live pretty normally. They're sort of what I would consider Mennonite if you're from Amish country, but they're not Mennonite. I don't know what group they are, but I've talked to them. I've had pleasant conversations with them at various times when I bought gas up there. But anyways, I just thought, this is ridiculous. And so anyway, I then got an email that said, oh, why don't you rate our store? And I thought, oh, you've got to be kidding. And then I realized, sure, because my name probably came up in their computer. I used to buy there fairly often. And so they don't realize who I am. So I wrote a very clear email, let's put it that way, back. And it popped up as a review. And I noticed I can't find it. It was on Google, but I'm not seeing it. So I think somebody took it down. But I get this letter from the owner of the store who says, oh, fulsome apology. It really wasn't. It sounded sincere, but it was, oh, this should never have happened. But here's what really annoys me, is I made a point of saying in my review, I am a white 60-year-old female, and here's how I was dressed and described it, and I had my hair wrapped in a scarf. And I'm pretty sure, and I just said it was a terrible experience. And so the owner writes to me, and he's just apologizing. Oh, this should never have happened. It was terrible. It was terrible. And it's like, dude, it was you. What do you mean it should never have happened? You did it. Racist, sexist, whatever you are. So then he goes, oh, well, to make it up, I'm giving you a 30% off coupon on your next purchase. 30%. So that's it. So in other words, once I tell you I'm white, you're like, oh, here's a discount. It's you've got to be kidding me. You've just got to be kidding me. So for those of you in the LA area, if you're a runner, Fleet Feet Sports, no. Big thumbs down. And he can take that 30%. First of all, he couldn't give me free shoes at this point. There isn't a discount this guy has that's going to make me shop there again. I don't know what was going on, but I know one thing that's going on. I'm not going back. So yesterday, I realized I still want the custom fitted insoles. So I go tootling down to Ventura Boulevard, a little further up the road, about 2 miles up the road, and find Roadrunner Sports, where I have a VIP membership. Sure enough, these are the people with the custom fitting machine. And I get so enthused, so I go in and I show them the shoes, and they say, they're great, they're wonderful. I waited in line, we were all socially distanced, there were a lot of people in buying shoes, instead of I was the only one in Fleet Feet Sports. And I'm the only one in there buying shoes. And they took, in Roadrunner there were a lot of us, but Alexis, my helper, she took her time. She listened carefully to what I wanted. She said, I'm sorry, but these shoes do not fit you, which they don't. They're a little too tight. I'm sort of between a 9 and a 9.5. And she said, let me try you in a 9.5. And I said, well, I might need extra wide, which is what the idiot at Fleet Feet kept saying. She said, you don't need extra wide. She said, your shoes are too short for you. So we put on 9.5s. They fit beautifully. And then I went over to their machine and stood in it, and we did a custom insole fitting. I can't even tell you how much better these shoes are. I didn't do a trial run in them. I knew when I stood up that these things, I've been having problems with my balance since I had COVID, strangely. I've been leaning to the outside of my feet. These things sorted me out immediately. The minute I stood up, I was standing up straight. I was relaxed. My toes had a natural spread. So I'm going to take the other shoes back to Fleet Feet and throw them at the guy. Or, barring that, I'll give them to charity. And meanwhile, Roadrunner Sports, I'm writing all over the internet, reviews, positive reviews. Of course, I got my VIP discount because I've been going to them for years. Why I decided to go back to Fleet Feet, I can't explain. And the custom fitted insoles are sensational, so there's something I really like as well, I guess. Total thumbs up to Roadrunner Sports on Ventura Boulevard in LA, down in the San Fernando Valley. Down in the Fluffy Books League, oh, I love this book, The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Harlow. And the link is in the show notes. Now, there's a whole genre of really screwy sequels to Jane Austen novels, especially to Pride and Prejudice. And most of them just straight up rot. I mean, most of them are just terrible. There's a few interesting, funny ones. There's a whole series where Lizzie Bennet Darcy and Fitzwilliam Darcy are detectives solving murders. And in those books, in each book, they run into the characters from another Austen novel. And those are tremendous fun and a little bit goofy. There's this duo of books, big, heavy books, that are written as sequels to Pride and Prejudice. I think the first one is Mr. Darcy Takes a Wife, and the second one is Days and Nights at Pemberley. They're written by this Texas housewife who claims that she eloped like Lydia Bennet, but instead of getting Mr. Wickham, she got Mr. Darcy. And these books, there's very screwed up historical inaccuracy all over them, but they are so fun. And midway through the first book, the author falls in love with the evil Mr. Wickham. And his character really begins to take over. And in the second book, it's just screamingly funny. So I can't recommend them as historically accurate, but funny. Anyway, so Janice Harlow took on the challenge of writing about Mary Bennet, the plain, mousy, blue-stocking middle sister of the Bennet girls in Pride and Prejudice. And other people have tried, and usually, yeah. But Janice Harlow hits it right, and for once, there are actually critical reviews by skilled reviewers of this book who say this book is really amazing. And it is. It takes the character of the middle Bennet sister, Mary Bennet, and Mary is not written to be a character. She's really just one of the foils to Lizzie Bennet, that Elizabeth Bennet, the protagonist of the novel, is meant to be this middle ground between all these extremes. And she's a model of how a good woman is still interesting, lively, and deserves happiness and should not settle for an arranged or stupid marriage. And so her other sisters, there's Lydia, who's kind of sleazy. There's Kitty, who just follows every fad, which means she follows Lydia. And there's Mary, who's the blue stocking, and Jane, who is the unattainable virtue and beauty model. And then you have Lizzie, the second oldest. And Lizzie is the actually platonic mean between all these extremes. And it's really great. And Lizzie is a great character. But this author, Janice Harlow, takes on Mary. And she starts explaining with really deep thought how Mary occurs, how Mary becomes the person she is. And it's poignant, and it's sweet, and it's sad, and it's very intelligent, and I can't put it down. So this is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Harlow. And if it gets you reading the sometimes deplorable sequels to all the Austen novels, so be it. It is a fun genre, but some of them are just dreadful fanfic. Something I really like, Roadrunner Sports on Ventura Boulevard, but also I happened across on Instagram Twice Sheared Sheep. The link is in the show notes. I was looking for some stitch markers. This is because the youngest Knitmore, Genevieve, was waxing poetic an episode or two ago on the Knitmore Girls about how she liked pretty stitch markers. Okay, Genevieve, this bud's for you. I went out and found pretty stitch markers. And you can see the pictures. They had this ad on Instagram for little kits. And of course, it won me over because it's a little tiny tin, as the British call it, a little metal box. And it has a very cute alpaca on the front with flowers in its hair. And then it has a rather complex row counter that allows you to go up to 99 rows. And at the end of it is dangling a little llama charm. So I couldn't help that. I bought that kit, but then you could get free shipping. And I thought, who doesn't want free shipping? And so I went roving among the stitch markers and found these beautiful ones that look like different colored dragon scales. And then they give you 5 different scale markers, different colors, and each one looks like these little glass scales. And then it had a charm with a dragon on it. So, no human can resist that. And wait, there's more. For $2, $3, I threw in another little tin. These are very tiny tins. They're only big enough to hold the stitch markers, or in this case, the long chain row counter. But the other one had a flying horse on it, and Pegasus is one of my icons, one of my avatars, so I had to buy that. You don't see a lot of Pegasus decorated stuff where I come from. So those pictures are in the show notes, and this is Twice Sheared Sheep, and there's a link. And it was very nice. I wouldn't say the prices are fantastic. They're okay, but the goodies are original and fun, and I like that style of row counter. So here we are at the Blather. Happy Persian New Year. I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but I was very pleased. I did not realize, I should have realized, of course, the equinox is New Year's in several cultures. I think it's a very sensible time to have New Year's. But my culture used to do it, and then we switched to January 1st. We decided to follow the Julian calendar logic. So what does this mean? Well, Happy Persian New Year. Happy Ostara. Happy Passover. A little early, I believe. Happy Easter. Again, a little early. But I wanted to say that before I get carried away. Now, the next thing I discovered this week was wool really doesn't burn. There I was lighting a candle with the interestingly named safety match, and I dropped it on my sweater, on my Francis Revisited. The smell was terrific. Do you know the sweater's not even scorched? I looked down, and there I am on fire, my midsection. And I just kind of knocked it off me onto the hardwood floor and squashed it with a shoe. Thank you, Crocs. But I looked down and I thought, oh no, I've ruined this. No, can't even tell. No idea where I dropped that match. I looked and looked and looked for a hole, for a burn, for a scorch, nothing. This, kids, is why I don't wear acrylic sweaters if I can help it. I would have gone up if I'd been wearing acrylic. Wool really does not burn, and I've done the experiment for you. I'm okay, just a little stunned. Meanwhile, I'm going to return to the topic of mental health and shootings, because as I record this, there's a mass shooting going on in Colorado. And they seem to have arrested the person, but the police are being very quiet about it, which has me a bit concerned right now. So that's a developing story as I record this at 8:19 p.m. on Monday, March 22nd. Here's the thing I would like to point out. Let's stop trying to criminalize all mental health. Let's call a white supremacist. I was really stunned that the sheriff gave a statement about this guy saying, oh, well, he was fed up. He was having a bad day. It's like, having a bad day? What? When I have a bad day, I curl up with a hot pad in my bed and drink tea and knit or listen to books or something. I don't go out and shoot people. I mean, what on earth is that sheriff saying? And he apparently was sympathetic when he said it. Sympathetic to the murderer? I'm sorry, I think that sheriff needs to be investigated for white supremacist ties. It was appalling. I could tell when I saw that in the news, the first thing that happened as I read that was I could hear the sound of the prison cops I used to work with howling with laughter. Because they never would have asked this guy anything. They would have just said, he's a blankety-blank killer. What do I care what his reasons are? He kills people. That's all it takes. You don't ask a reason. Why are we listening to a mass murderer about anything? And why is the sheriff presenting it in a sympathetic light? You've got to be kidding me. And then the murderer says, well, I have a sex addiction. Yeah, okay, fine. It's not that I'm racist. It's that I have a sex addiction. Excuse me. People with addictions don't kill people. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Let me explain something to you. As someone who diagnoses people professionally for a living for the last 30 years, If you look at the diagnostic criteria for any addiction, in none of them it says kills people. That is not about addiction. I have addiction. I have a sugar addiction. That's why I'm diabetic, because I couldn't control my carb consumption until I finally went completely cold turkey, because basically I found out I had diabetes. Let me explain to you one more time. When I'm having a bad day and I'm fed up, I control myself till the end of the day, till I'm done with my patients. I write all my notes for the better protection of my patients and make any phone calls I have to make while taking deep breaths and using the skills that I'm teaching you for dialectical behavior therapy. I don't threaten to kill people, and I don't kill people. Would never cross my mind. That's being fed up. When you go out and kill people, you're an antisocial jerk, and you're basically, I'm sorry, a white supremacist. There's no other way for me to understand this guy. And one of the paltry excuses, well, two of them weren't Asian. No, well, I don't think he minded much. One of them, I know, the name sounded Hispanic. So I think he's just, oh, goody. All the skin colors I can nail in a shooting. I mean, yeah. So please, guys, let's stop asking mass murderers why they do what they do. Let me explain something to you. I work with severely mentally ill people. I'm really good at crazy. Let me explain something to you. We don't listen to crazy. We manage it. A patient comes into my office. Yes, this has happened. Hands me a roll of tinfoil. Says, and the patient is wearing a tinfoil hat. And the patient says to me, "You must make a tinfoil hat." And I say, "Why?" "The aliens are listening to my thoughts. And if you don't wear a tinfoil hat, I'll know that you're one of those aliens." Now, let me explain to you what goes on at this moment when you're the therapist. You think, this person's really crazy. They have a chance of getting violent. They're really frightened of aliens. And so, you know what I do? I don't say, "Oh, no, there's no such thing." I make the damn hat. I put it on my head. And I say, "Okay, wow, thanks for letting me know. Listen, I'm going to go out and find the alien alarm. You need to stay right here. You're safe in here because the walls are lined with lead. They can't hear you here." And I get my butt out of the office because my life is in danger. Okay? At no time do I take his words seriously as meaningful or logical. All I'm acting right now to do is to save myself. After I save myself, because I have a lot of people depending on me, so I'm saving myself first, then I'm going to look at his safety. And I'm going to basically make sure he's kept in that room. I'm going to use any kind of security force I have at hand to keep him in that room. And I'm also going to see if I can pop in and talk to him, but not with me going in the room, just sticking my head and saying, "You okay here?" And I'll be having someone call 911 because he's floridly psychotic, okay? And this is how we train our people. When I supervise people, I train them. We do not talk to crazy. We manage crazy. We don't listen to it. We don't take it seriously. All we're doing is saying, what do I have to do to keep myself first safe and then this person? Okay, we don't listen to crazy. Why anybody asked that jerk what he was doing is beyond me. And every prison cop I've ever worked with would tell you that. When I was working maximum security, nobody was asking the murderers why they committed murder. It's a waste of time. You can't get anything from them except probably crazy. And do I think that crazy people then shouldn't go to prison? That's actually outside my purview. I don't ask that question. That is a question of the law, that the American Constitution gives the right to make those determinations to the people, state by state. And that's as far as I go with it because my license is issued by the law. So my personal beliefs are not in this picture. The reality is I cannot imagine why any officer of the law, including that sheriff, is interested in what that man had to say. He's a mass murderer. He needs to be treated as such. And whatever the law of the state of Georgia does, I hope it takes into account that it's supposed to be blind. Justice wears a blindfold. But please, for heaven's sake, let's stop criminalizing mental health issues. Somebody wrote in and said, on one of the blogs I was reading, their response was, "Oh, it's not about racism, it's about mental health and guns." No, it's not. It's about racism and guns. Stop dragging mentally ill people into it. I've treated hundreds of mentally ill people, and none of them were picking up guns except the ones who were behind bars where they probably needed to be. Okay, so no, we're not going to start dragging mental health into this because or let's put it another way. If we're going to drag mental health into it, could we please do that for shooters who are not white guys? Because I don't see that happening. I see that only happening with the white male shooters. And that's just frankly terrorism. So please, let's stop trying to criminalize mental health. While I am not a big fan of addiction, having experienced it myself and having dealt with a lot of patients over the years that are experiencing it, I surely do not confuse that with murderous intent, and you shouldn't either. So that was a pretty glum way to finish things, but I'm going to wrap it up here. Now, kids, remember what you've learned. P is for prayer. And we should all celebrate the equinox. Wool really does not burn, so keep making high-quality sweaters. And for heaven's sake, when you meet somebody with mental health issues, stop confusing that with murderous racist jerks, okay? And on that happy note, again, happy Persian New Year, happy Ostara, happy Passover, happy Easter, and happy anything else you might be celebrating, happy equinox that I may have missed. Please remember to take care of yourselves. Please remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distant, get your vaccines as soon as you can. Congratulations, Gigi, my dear. And most of all, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.